Gopimanande. Hari Om. Okay, now we're on to the second chapter, text number 31 to 40. And we'll start off as normal. Sorry? How's the volume, by the way? Is the volume any good? Because sometimes people were saying the volume is a bit low.
Yeah.
Is it any better, do you think, or is the volume okay?
Your volume right now for us? Yeah.
No, I mean for
online.
Yeah.
I have no idea.
No.
Okay.
We probably know if we check another phone at the moment.
Yeah. Maybe have to check because I know Shani's back at home and she'll tell us.
If she tell us,
she'll tell us if it's loud enough.
You can ask her.
Or maybe you can check Facebook at the moment.
She'll tell you if it's loud enough anyway.
Facebook, how to find Facebook?
If you go on Abbey Krishna Consciousness.
So we can all read. Actually, I was thinking that we maybe just read the English, you know. It's a little bit harder with the Sanskrit, I think, that we're not all Sanskritists. So it's easier if we just do the English and then see how we get on. So we can all read. Actually, that's pretty good. Yeah, that's right. Okay. Even though if you're really tempted to do the Sanskrit and you feel really comfortable with it, that's okay. But you know, if it's a chore, it's better. You know, just to read English. Okay. So it's starting with text 31. I'll start off, and then we go round. We go round the room and read English. Considering your specific duty as a Kshatriya, you should know that there is no better engagement for you than fighting on religious principles, and so there is no need for hesitation. 32.
O Prata, happy are the Kshatriya to whom such fighting opportunities come up so, opening for them the door of the heavenly planets.
If, however, you do not perform your religious duty of fighting, then you will certainly incur sins for neglecting your duties and thus lose your reputation as a fighter.
People will always speak of your infamy, and for a respectable person, dishonor is worse than death.
The great generals who have highly esteemed your name and fame will think that you have left the battlefield out of fear only, and thus they will consider you insignificant.
Your enemies will describe you in many unkind words and scorn your ability. What could be more painful for you?
O son of Kunti, either you will be killed on the battlefield and attain the heavenly planets, or you will conquer and enjoy the earthly kingdom. Therefore, get up and with determination and fight.
Do you, though, fight for the sake of fighting without considering happiness or distress, loss or gain, victory or defeat, and by doing you shall incur sin.
Therefore, I have described this knowledge to you through analytical study. Now listen as I explain it in terms of working without fruitive result. O son of Partha, when you act in such knowledge, you can free yourself from the bondage of words.
In this endeavor there is no loss or diminution, and a little advancement on this path can protect one from the most dangerous type of fear. I
was born in the darkness of ignorance, and a spiritual master opened my eyes with a torchlight of knowledge. I offer my respectful obeisances unto him. And the funny thing here is what's happening is that Krishna has completely changed his tack in the way that he's addressing Arjuna. Arjuna has said that he's not going to fight, and he gives a whole load of reasons which we heard in the first chapter why he's not going to fight. But Krishna said to him that, you know, okay, you're speaking like a learned person, but you know, you don't really know what is the goal of life. And then Krishna then went on from verses, something like from verses 213, 212, 213, all the way up to 230, explaining about the nature of the soul. You know, how that we're different from the body. You know, and this is really the essence of spiritual life, all the way from the very beginning. It's like Krishna's first instruction, that we're not the material covering, but what exists is that we are a soul, which is inhabiting the body, and it's like the body is like a covering of it, and that the goal of life really is to recognize this soul in amidst this confused body, and not only the gross body we'll find later on. It's just there's also the subtle body, which is the mind and the intelligence, and then there's another element called the false ego. And the false ego is the thing which ties the soul to the material body, and that's very, very tight. It's like in fact, it's like a prison house. You know, we might as well, you know, own up to the fact that it is a prison house, and that the prison doors, or whatever you call those things, the bars in the prison are material desires, you know, and we're held steadfast in there by that misconstruction, thinking that we're the body, and thinking that the desires that we have for happiness here is that they're the actual bars of the prison, that we think that we can be happy here. It's quite amazing, actually, because everybody's looking to be happy, you know, but that's the very thing which is keeping us here. Now, there's nothing wrong with being happy, because that's the nature of the soul, but it's just where we find the happiness. So the Bhagavad Gita is a whole instruction of where to find our real happiness, which is in the understanding of the soul different from the body, and the soul in its relationship with Krishna. Because generally what happens is that the soul is we're trying to enjoy our senses. We're trying to be happy. I want to be happy in this world. I work hard every day. I have, you know, I get married, I have a wife, I have children, you know, and all of these things are there so that I can be actually happy. You know, we're thinking that this is how we think. And as I say, there is scope in that in Krishna Consciousness, obviously, as well, because there's very many happy people there who are married and all of those things. But the other aspect to it is that whole idea of us being happy is not the real position of the soul is that we're there to please Krishna. You know, we're not there just to please ourselves. You know, I might have as many chocolates as I can, you know, but there's a limit to the amount of chocolates I can eat, you know, and eventually I'll think, oh, I don't want to eat chocolates anymore. But that is the kind of idea of us, you know, bringing stuff in for ourselves. But what we're trying to do in Krishna Consciousness is actually to go outwards. Now, people initially, they go outwards, which is good, and it says in Bhagavad Gita there's a place for it as well, where we're trying to help other people, you know. But the really helping other people is knowing who we are ourselves, you know, because who are you helping? You could be helping the other person's false ego as well. You're just kind of helping them in the prison house. You know, you're giving them a bar of chocolate in the prison house, where in fact you could give the person the key to get out of the prison house. But you have to know how to get out of the prison house yourself before you can really help with the key for somebody else. But that's the idea, though. And while we're in this situation, there's a state, and Prabhupada uses it very earlier, called Jivan Mukta, which means that you're liberated even while in the body. And that is that you have a sense of Krishna consciousness, you know, and that's where we gain our identity. Our identity is in relation to Krishna, to how we can actually serve Krishna, And that's why we have the whole idea of the temple and everything, and you know, that we can see that Krishna is a person, and that we can, you know, make flowers for Krishna, we can make offerings of food to Krishna, we can have Abbey shakes, we can have, you know, we do all these different things. And also Krishna, as you can see, he appears in the form of Lord Chaitanya, and he's at his arms outraised, and he wants to help other people realize spiritual life, and so we can help him do that, you know. Like as we've done before, we've gone on the street, we've given out leaflets, we can have books, so that people actually also can partake in the Sankirtan movement. And the method is simple, you know, because the method can't be too complicated, because the place is quite complicated. You know, this whole material world isn't some kind of, you know, easy peasy thing that you can just get out of, you know. It's very, very complex actually. But it is a very simple method to get out of it though. And that is that by congregational chanting of the holy name, by, you know, by calling Krishna together, you know, and with that in mind, that's why it's also good that we have our monthly, you know, Kirtan, 6-hour Kirtan, whatever, you know. It's good because that means we can get the taste of all calling out to Krishna together, and that gives that Krishna then comes. He actually, you know, descends in that sense. Golokera Premadana Harinam Sankirtan. He actually descends into the material world. So that's why the method is really easy for this age in that sense. But we have the whole potency of Krishna behind it, you know. Because Krishna ultimately is the person who has created the jailhouse in that sense, you know. He has created the illusion, shall we say. Well, I don't want to get into too heavy a kind of analogy of the jail, but he's created the illusion. But it's there for a reason, though. As most correctional items is so that we can actually learn. And in the way in which we learn the most is through this method of Sankirtan, and by excuse me, and by hearing. And that's why we have these classes as well. We have the classes so that we can also learn the philosophy, which goes with the chanting. And those two methods together are really powerful. I mean, we can do other things. We can do dramas as well. That's another powerful way of expressing. I was at a fantastic drama in Mayapur, done by Bhakti Marg Swami. Yeah, it was called the Many Mothers, Many Fathers was the name of it, and it's based on the Chitraketu from the Bhagavatam, and it involves Narada and Angira. It's what happens is that there's this king, and this is in many previous lifetimes now, but he had many wives, but none of them were able to give him a child, you know, and he was completely overwrought. And it's because, see, these kings, their whole idea was succession, you know, because they wanted to keep the parampara going, so it was a major thing. So these two sages came, Narada and Angira came, and they said, "What's wrong with you?" And he said, "You're a king, you're the most pious, you're so well known everywhere, you're such a wonderful personality. Why are you sad?" And he said, "I'm sad because I don't have any person to be my next king, you know, the next prince." And but they had come actually to give him knowledge, but he was too caught up in the world, you know. In other words, he was too caught up in this temporary world to really hear the knowledge. And they said, so what it is, sorry, can you do anything about it? And Gira said, under Narada's coaxing, that, well, I tell you what, I will give you this sweet rice, and you can give it to one of your queens, and then she will become pregnant, and you will have a child. And the name of the child will be Harsha Shoka, which means he will give you some pleasure, but will also be the cause of pain. But the king didn't hear the second part, and just wanted to have the child because he was so attached. So what he did was then he chose his favorite queen, and then she became pregnant and had a child. But what happened was that all the other queens were very jealous because they wanted, you know, they were being ignored. And so they plotted to kill the child, because they felt so bad that they were being completely ignored, and so then actually what they did was the child died because they poisoned the child, and then the king and the queen were completely overwrought by grief. And then who came in next? Narada and Angela returned. And this was being played on stage. It was brilliant. The drama was fantastic. The queens were all dressed identically, and they were dancing to and fro. And then they came from the audience, and there was 8 queens dancing back and forth. And then the scene of the king being very upset at the start as well was great, because his jester was there. Hare Krishna. Yes, come on. Yeah. How you doing? Good to see you. Hare Krishna. The king's jester was there, and because he saw that the king was very upset, because he hadn't got any child, and so the king, the jester was doing all these drama. He was a joker, and he was dressed incredibly, and and it was so funny to see him doing all these things to try to make the king laugh. And then, but then when the king knew that he was going to have a child, there was these dancers came in, these male dancers, and one was from the Bulgarian ballet, and he was absolutely fantastic. Like the moves he was doing was amazing, very professional. And this was all by Bhakti Marg Swami. Had this all going on, And but anyway, the story went on that the king came out, and they saw that the child was dead, and they were absolutely grief-stricken. And then Angira came back, and he said, "What's wrong? You look as if there's something really wrong." And then they pointed to the child, which was dead. And then the Angira said, "I will bring the child back to life," and he was able to bring the child back to life. And this was an actual child actually playing. Well, it was 10 or 11, and it was really dramatic. And so the child came back, and the mother and father came and saw them again, and the other queens came, and they were totally distraught as well for what they had done. They didn't realize, they had. So then the boy started to speak, and then he said, "You're my mother and father? But which mother is it? I've had many mothers and fathers over millions of lifetimes. Which one are you talking about, And so the whole drama of it was phenomenal. And then they realized that the whole message came through then to Chitriketu, what the whole goal of life, because they got so into this present here and now that they forgot that there's a much greater reality, and so at the end of it all, they had a greater understanding and a greater and Chitriketu said, "Why did you not tell me this originally?" And Angira and Narada said, "Well, you wouldn't have understood it if I had told you at that time, because you were so immersed." And so then they became happy, because they realized the soul, that their son didn't die, because the soul was eternal, and it was the eternal soul that was talking to them. So it really clarified them very clearly what this world is. And the last scene was that the child then, the lights went down, and the child just started to walk into the audience, walk away, and it was wow. So it was a fantastic play, but that's just some of the other ways in which Krishna consciousness can be presented. So just going back to the text here, is there any comments or any questions at this point? Anyone like to add anything? No? Okay. We're just going through the Bhagavad Gita text 31 to 40.
Okay, great, thanks.
Yeah, so...
I'm just dipping in on my break, and I
No,
have to go
good stuff.
soon, so sorry
No,
for
that's all.
interrupting.
No, good to see you.
Yeah,
I meant to
great,
send you an
thanks.
email to tell you this was going on the Monday, so...
No, great, man.
It's going on.
I
Yeah.
work every Monday night, so...
Okay.
Yeah.
But it's good to see
Yeah, you
good to
too,
see
yeah, good to see
Great.
you.
So, this part is where Krishna, he starts to, he takes a different tack. He starts to chide Arjuna. He starts to say, why are you not fighting? You're supposed to be a Kshatriya. This is what you're supposed to do. All the other generals will think you're just fleeing the battle out of fear. Your great name will be will not be regarded anymore. You'll lose your reputation. And now I noticed that this, even this first text, and this is, it's something about Bhagavad Gita that some people find difficulty with, and it's mainly based around the fact that there are different orders of life, and people have different things to do. A Kshatriya is meant to protect. The Kshat means to, Prabhupada explains in the purport, let me see.
To give protection.
To give protection, yeah, exactly. And so we understand that in life that we do need people to protect you. And he brings in the whole point of the Varnashram Dharma. And the Varnashram Dharma, Prabhupada says, is like man's stepping stone for spiritual understanding. So because we're born with certain natures, the idea is that we use those natures in Krishna's service, and we try to work cooperatively with our natures, and like that's ideal in a temple. Like we have people doing different services, and we kind of work together. And that was another thing I was studying over in India, was the whole idea of team building. Building a team to do things. It's a great science, because people have got different qualities, and those qualities can all come together. Then it has a really powerful effect, Also, planning, strategic planning, like thinking that. I basically, I think this is good that we continue our Monday night Bhagavad Gita, because it means that, the Shastra's going on, and no matter what, every Monday night we're going to keep on doing Shastra, even if nobody comes. But we try to make sure that more people come, but still, and then people can tune in online. And so that we use our time, whatever limited time that we have, in doing the two most important things in life, which is hearing and chanting. And if we could only do those two things and do nothing else, well, we perform service, and of course daily worship. This is the total fulfillment of our life. Haridas Thakur, he was used to chant 192 rounds every day, which meant that he never stopped chanting. Now we can't imitate Haridas Thakur, but we can do the chanting ourselves. But so as collectively as a group, to keep these keep on doing the chanting the Hare Krishna like this, and chanting the Bhagavad Gita, and then in the future, Bhagavatam. Normally every temple has Bhagavatam going on in the morning times, but I think that we have to start at some point just to go through the whole Bhagavatam in the evenings on another night or something. It's just that's the function of the temple is like that, and once those things are going on, it creates such auspiciousness. It's the most the Lord Chaitanya would call Bhagavatam the spotless Purana, and everything in the whole Chaitanya Charitamrita, it's based on Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavatam. You get to learn the whole nuts and bolts of Krishna consciousness, how it all fits together, and then it gives you the inner technology, how to bring about spiritual development in your life. It gives you the tools to work with, how to attract, the mercy, basically, ultimately. One of the ways that we do that is that we hear people who are advanced in the science of spirit, and coming in parampara as well. Like they're not just making it up; they're repeating what the actual science is, and that's why I love this whole idea of just going through Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita as it is, because you know then that's Evam Parampara Praptam Imam Rajarshi Ovidu. It's the same message that Krishna was given to Arjuna, and Prabhupada throughout these purports is presenting this as well, and it's said that they're Prabhupada's ecstasies. Bhagavatam is about the ecstasies that Prabhupada had as a pure devotee. that's an easy, that those two words, pure devotee, but actually he's an empowered emissary sent by Krishna to help people in this age. And so with this empowered Prabhupada is, even up to his last breath, his last breath, you see those videos of Prabhupada, he's just about able to speak, and they have the microphone up, and he's speaking into the microphone, and it's clear, it's absolutely crystal clarity of spiritual knowledge that he's speaking. And then also, which is a very valuable thing which we can have, is that when we study Prabhupada's books, we actually we can develop a relationship with Prabhupada as well. He's alive. Prabhupada is there. That's the nature of these spiritual personalities. They're very powerful. So they're actually. That's what he said, that you can know me I'm in my books basically, and we can actually get to know Prabhupada, because, as I said, these are his ecstasies, they're his thoughts, and yeah.
Okay, that's a question.
Yeah, go.
The spiritual masters, do they reincarnate?
Oh, I mean, it says in the scripture that they do. Janmani Ishvara. No, it's Iba Yasa Kushuk Tribhuvana. Aha Prabhu Kora Doya Deho Mori Padachoy. Eva Yasa Gushuk Tribhuvana. I'm not sure the exact words, but it's in a phrase that we say, the spiritual master, is your spiritual master life after life? And Prabhupada was asked this question, I'll ask Dina on this as well. But Prabhupada was asked this question before, but Prabhupada says, don't make me that I have to come back, In other words, become spiritually realized in this lifetime, But the spiritual master, in one sense, there's many aspects to that as well, because there's multi-dimensions. Krishna could send, there's some understandings of Prabhupada, when he left, he went to another place to preach Krishna consciousness, and some devotees went with him, who were here with him, and they left their bodies, but they went to be with their spiritual master. Others stayed on here and they're waiting, and then they'll go eventually and they'll help their spiritual master there. But then there's other disciples who won't make it in one lifetime, so the spiritual master will come back for them. But it's not, knowing how the spiritual master reappears can be different. I mean, they can empower some other person to do it. They can, the Bilva Thakur, his spiritual master was, lady of the night, shall we say. She was a spiritual master, and she actually, his original spiritual master spoke through her, and told him to come, told him to take up spiritual life. So the spiritual master is not dimensional. He can act, still bringing the disciple even from another dimension. So it can be like that as well. Yeah. Okay. Dina, do you have anything to add to that?
Oh yes, I understand. Spiritual master incarnates or reincarnates means not because of is anyway insufficient in spiritual advancement or has some karmic reactions to force him to incarnate, but because in the service of the Lord, there's so much more souls to save, so much more preaching to do. So he chooses to come again for the missionary activities. Yeah. So it's different. It's not exactly reincarnation. It's a totally different thing. It's out of compassion and in the service of the Lord. So
yeah, I suppose that's what I meant. Not that they simply were born again. That they came back to continue what they were already doing. Thanks very much. Manu, I'm really sorry to head back to work.
No, it's good to see you, Craig. Well done.
Thanks. See you soon.
Yeah.
and safe drive.
See you soon.
So those two different 31, 32, Krishna is saying to Arjuna that he should fight because this is his duty, and there's some interesting phrase here excuse me. Human civilization begins from the stage of varnashram dharma, or specific duties in terms of the specific modes of nature of the body obtained. So we have different bodies, so from previous lifetimes, so we should try to use those in Krishna's service. And then, as I said to you, then Krishna's basically chiding Arjuna, telling him that, the great generals who've taught your name and fame will think that you've left the battlefield out of fear, and they will consider you insignificant. Your enemies will describe you in many unkind words and scorn your ability. What could be more painful for you? And then he says that, that you'll be leaving, you'll think that you'll at least you'll get away with your life. You think that you've run away, and you'll still be alive at least. But actually, and he makes this phrase that, but for one who is honoured, dishonour is worse than death. So if you're living and you're being dishonoured, you're going to feel, this isn't worth it at all. He's telling him, if you don't fight and this is your duty, you're going to feel completely bad. So, and then we have this famous verse, do thou fight. We don't use the word thou that much anymore, but it's there. Do thou fight for the sake of fighting, without considering happiness or distress, loss or gain, victory or defeat. And by so doing, you shall never incur sin. This is an interesting thing, and this is a way to actually act. That I was speaking to a devotee recently, and although we want to achieve something in Krishna consciousness, still we can't decide the result. We don't know the result. Do you know what I mean? We just, it's something that can be there or not there. But Krishna consciousness means that it kind of means that you just have to do your duty anyway, and then Krishna will reward it or not reward it. So this idea of praying as though everything depends on God, but acting as though everything depends on you, that is a good thing to do. Like that, it's your duty. You do to the best of your ability. The result will come to Krishna, will from Krishna. But you have to work for you kind of work with the idea of pleasing Krishna with your service. And Krishna's not so much worried about the result, although we are worried to make a nice offering to Krishna. It's not not that we just there's the flowers, Krishna. Make yourself a garland or something like that. You want to make a nice garland, as we can see, and that that's how we should live our life. If we're Krishna conscious, every moment, then we will offer as to Krishna. That is a high standard. But we should never not be, always keep that in mind, even if we're not on that standard, if you know what I mean. We always kind of realize that this is what we're trying to achieve. Sometimes there's an interesting analogy that's used of a horse, because the mind is very active and is always dreaming up all sorts of different possibilities. Sometimes when we're trying to control the horse, if you keep on pulling on the horse all the time, the horse will probably, it'll fight you basically, and you won't be able to defeat it. But sometimes you have to give your horse a little bit of head, let him loose a little bit, and that way also in Krishna consciousness, sometimes we're not going to be able to control our mind completely, but at the same time, we should always keep in mind as well that every moment is a valuable moment. It usually for me happens when I'm giving class, which I find I'm more Krishna conscious at that point. So that therefore I'd always encourage everybody to try to give class at some point as well, because it gives you that ability to, because you have to focus on Krishna and you're praying to Krishna, that Krishna's there, you know. So it puts you a little bit under pressure, but it really is. Sometimes it's. Shani said to me that it's. Some people find it's the hardest thing to do. You know, that they don't. That's the last thing they want to. Public speaking apparently is a thing that people hate to do. They just don't want to do it. But still, you can give class to the four walls. You don't have to have an audience even. But it does help you concentrate because you have to think about what you're saying. That was another thing which I found that which they do over in Mayapur as well, is that they give you teacher training and they teach you also about giving class and about public speaking, a lot of things like that. You know, there's lots of different areas in which you can get some sort of grounding and take it further. Like this, it even goes into class 3-month courses and then year courses, and so if you want to take a year off and go to Mayapur or Radha, but it's very interesting to spend some time like that. A 3-month study course. But at the same time, Prabhupada also said that India is for inspiration, you know, because Prabhupada wants us to be in the West and and to be able to give Krishna consciousness to have the compassion for people that are here. So that's the main point in that. Do thou fight for the sake of fighting without considering happiness or distress, loss or gain, victory or defeat, and by so doing you shall never incur sin. And then there's, so I'm nearly finished. Is there any points at this? Anyone like to ask anything?
This is very practical instruction for our daily life.
Yeah.
You know, we're constantly struggling with things we don't like to do. We try to postpone, avoid, you know, put it in the back, you know, of my mind, somewhere away. I know I need to do it, but not just now. Sounds familiar for somebody. So, either we are afraid that we're going to fail, so we're kind of attached to results in our mind. We want to have a good result. That's one of the reasons we avoid it, or or some other fear, or just laziness. But this verse, if you just remember this verse,
it is a good one actually.
It's really practical.
Yeah.
And just Gita is full of such practical verses.
Yeah, I mean Krishna's getting him to. Because even in the context, he's getting him ready to actually get involved in the battle. You know, don't be thinking about all these other things. Just do your fight as you're meant to do. This is what you're meant to do as a Kshatriya. And then he gives him the energy to do it. And
interesting how Krishna is using all kind of different arguments. Psychological. Now he kind of little bit. Pushes the buttons of ego. You know, as a Kshatriya, you have a warrior pride. How can you let, you know, teachers say, be disappointed with you? Like he tries from all kind of angles, like pokes Arjuna, like so it's nice.
See, the Bhagavad Gita is alive, isn't it? I mean, it's really. It's an incredible book because you can really imagine it on the battlefield, you know, Krishna and Arjuna talking, and there's all these armies around, and they can actually hear somehow or other because they're all there witnessing, looking what's going on, and Dhritarashtra is there, and Sanjaya is looking into his heart through the television, the heart television, and speaking what's actually going on. So this is like a billion viewers on a TV program or something like that, Olympic Games or whatever. So it's a major happening in the whole cosmos. And funny, it's as well as, I mean, when you read Fridananda Maharaj's Bhagavad Gita or Mahabharata, when he speaks about the Mahabharata, this is a whole cosmic war that's going on as well. It's like, and it's been enacted on the earth, but there's a whole other kind of dimension to it as well, and then it all hinges on this conversation in the battlefield, because Duryodhana there's the forces of evil want Duryodhana to be the victor, but Krishna is he's appearing just to make sure that Arjuna and the brothers are going to be they're the virtue, they're the symbol of virtue, and that's what Krishna wants. Because ultimately, it's as I didn't get to Karma Guru's class. How many qualities did he get done yesterday?
Oh, it's 26.
Many?
From 13 to 26.
Oh, he did from 13 to 26, did he? Really? That was quite a lot, actually.
But he didn't do them in order.
Oh, I see. Yeah, because he stopped at 4 the first day, wasn't it? Yeah. Okay, well, that's very good. So they were all the virtuous qualities, and that's what Krishna was coming down to do, was to bring virtue, in that sense. So that was why he was. Are the verses up there?
Yes.
Oh, I see. Very good. Oh, that's really good. So that's what he wanted to bring into the world, and that was also a theme of the it's called the ILS in Mayapur, the ISKCON Leader Sangha. There was a large theme on virtue, and one of Prabhupada's disciples, Rasa Mandala Prabhu, he did a kind of a course on ethics as well, and very, very interesting. Unfortunately, sometimes it's too short. You want to get into a thing in more depth, and you can't, and the class is over, and But the nice part about it is that you can meet a lot of the devotees afterwards, and then lots of conversations ensue. So I'm just going to go on to this last verse, or this 39 is. Krishna brings in two different aspects here. Has anyone read this verse 39 and its purport? And did you hear that? Did you see the section about Sakya? Could I ask you what you understood by that?
I actually had to Google it.
Okay, very good. Well, that's good. And what was your understanding?
It was like they actually, before setting the universe, there's only two factors.
Yeah.
It's only consciousness and material, something like that.
Yeah.
That's what we can remember.
Oh yeah. Yeah. No, I do you know that?
It was a long purport. I read everything up to that.
Okay.
Then I.
Yeah.
This is about Sankhya philosophy.
Exactly.
This is Lord Kapilada's presentation there of 25 material elements, 24 material elements plus that's the soul, 25th.
Yeah.
So
it's I suppose it breaks down that there was two Kapilas, and there was an imposter as well, and Prabhupada really in this purport really makes this point that there was two. There's the real Sakya, which is by Lord Kapila, who's an incarnation of Krishna, and who appeared to Devahuti, and that he explained basically what was explained earlier about the analytical study of the body and the soul. That's basically what that Sakya is. And the other Sakya of the other Kapila is a confused mishmash, saying that the soul and the super soul are one, and there's no difference, and we become one with, and we merge into that, and that is Prabhupada really takes every opportunity, to really hammer this point home. And we don't merge; we're individual. Even throughout it, Krishna Bhagavan is, if you notice all the times Bhagavan says aham, I, all the time, and he doesn't. Arjuna is different, and there's all the different explanations and phrases which explain the difference between the living entity and the Supreme. So Prabhupada uses every opportunity to make this point, and you'll find that throughout your whole Krishna consciousness, Prabhupada is there with you, making that point very clearly for you, so you'll never fall into that. Because Lord Chaitanya even said that to hear sometimes even these explanations is very dangerous. Because it's called the last snare of Maya. You can't be God, because you first of all you think you're a God because you want everybody, like as made the point at the start, you want everyone for yourself. You're selfish. I'm to be there to be served. I want to be the boss, the biggest, the most famous, the most powerful. Everyone's vying for position, and that's our ego desire to be God. But then we realize that we're not God. We're pretty clearly not God. But then we get to understand that there is God, and then we try to serve God. But just before we get into that, we try to maybe I'm part of God, and maybe I'm, in one sense we are, but I'm just saying, maybe I'll merge into God, and then I'll be happy. Then that's what I have to do. I have to lose my individuality and become God. That's the last snare of Maya. So that shows you how powerful this material energy is. So Prabhupada all throughout is highlighting these points for us, so that we never get into that kind of that way of thinking. And Lord Chaitanya is also making that point as well. Sorry, I did a lot of talking there. I should be asking for. Does anybody have even take one point over what we spoke tonight, over what you read, which actually you would say resounded well with you? Is there any? What would you say of all that we've discussed there? What kind of the form immediately? I'll ask her because I know because you read it, which is good. Laura's smiling there. Maybe you have some point.
Well, at one point that I read, that kind of, I don't know, it's just that when it said when you're honored and you do something and get dishonored, that it's worse than death,
Yeah.
And kind of started thinking about that, it's better to just, don't know how to explain it, but.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? Because see, the thing is that as aspiring devotees, we, it's great to, it's really good to aim as high as we can. But sometimes when we don't really hit the heights, we don't get discouraged, and so it's even good to, I've often found, and this is something that I found with Duryodhana. Guru who said, Duryodhana gave the week before last, wasn't it? Yeah. Sometimes we can be a little hard on ourselves, and we think, oh God, I'm not doing really tough, and then if we make a little mistake, we say, oh, why did I do that? But it's still the best policy in Krishna consciousness is it's not that you fall back a bit, it's how you bounce back, even if you fall back, okay, because it's going to happen to all of us, we're not, and funny, a lot of it is how resilient we can be, because we have to be, and Mahatma says this a lot, doesn't he? Is that don't be too hard on yourself. Like just you've got to still be there, because if you're too hard on yourself, then you say, oh no, good, I can't do it, forget about it, But it's just in relation to what you're saying about being dishonored, being worse than that, it's definitely that's a factor. But as aspiring devotees, that's something that we have to deal with. Do you get what I'm saying? You know, that even if we don't really always get it right, you know, but still, getting it right means bouncing back. You know, that's the real.
It's still very painful, like what's very painful when you are very good at something and then you're not going for it, you know. So, and then your enemies will be talking about you, saying words to you. So it's really painful. That's good.
Well, that's true.
Well, one thing I was wondering, when reading 35, when he talked about name and fame, I was wondering, but that's kind of linked to the, like, you know, the body rather than the soul, right? So like, why is Krishna kind of pointing that to Arjuna now?
It's because as a Kshatriya, it's just, they're so into that actually. And even though Arjuna was probably, there is evidence though that, do you know that time when there was, Arjuna went to the forest and then there was this person that he saw was shooting arrows as good as he was? This happened in Mahabharata actually. And it happened to be that there was this, he was a disciple of Dronacharya, but Dronacharya didn't know him. But he had a picture of Dronacharya, and he had Dronacharya's guru, and so because Dronacharya is a great archer and his teacher Arjuna, then he became as good as, and so Arjuna became really upset because he thought he was the best disciple. And then what Dronacharya asked him for his thumb, and he gave it to him. Cool. So, is that conditioned nature by Arjuna? Or is it Leela by Arjuna? Is it...
knowing that he's eternal associate of Krishna, it must be Leela.
Yes.
Because someone with big false ego cannot be eternal associate.
That's right.
So it must be.
But actually, you know, I was looking at it as well. We were talking about Krishna's different tactics. Because Krishna says, and I think you said he's calling Prita and Partha, you know. So he's asking him to act as befitting, you know, as well. So it's another way he's doing that as well. So he's calling Partha because if you're son of Kunti, or if you're the son of your father, you know, what's his father?
Prita.
Oh, Prita, yeah. Yeah, so why, you know, are you not fighting, you know? So you have to outlive your family. So Krishna's doing that all the time there. So 1, 2, 3, you know. So Krishna knows how to press the buttons there. And actually another time when Arjuna was actually, that happened to him was when, at that time a Kshatriya was so honoured that if ever even somebody died a young person died in his kingdom, then the Kshatriya was considered to be blamed, you know. And there happened to be this Brahmin, and every time he would have a child and then he would die, and then he'd go to Arjuna and call him, you know, what's this, you know, I'm in this kingdom, and eventually Arjuna says, if I don't find the reason for this, I'll enter into the fire, basically. So, you know, this Kshatriya principles like that. And so, of course, it was Leela. He went and I think Krishna went with him or accompanied him to the Mahavishnu. To see Mahavishnu. Mahavishnu brought him there because Mahavishnu wanted to see Krishna. So again, you see that there seems to be that real, in that nature is that, and you'll see it in Bhima throughout as well. Bhima was, you know, if he's dishonoured, that this is, and the other kings calling him, you know, looking down on him. It's a very good question, very good point. Yeah. So
generally, also the point here is that people work very hard for reputation in this world.
Yeah.
And one sense, reputation is often the most valuable thing we have.
Yeah.
Reputation.
Yeah.
Right. If you spoil your reputations,
you're
finished.
Yeah.
Especially Kshatriyas.
Yeah.
To some degree everyone, but especially Kshatriyas. affected by this.
Yeah. And one thing I was thinking about from your question as well, Rena, is that sometimes the painfulness as well, sometimes that's how we learn as well, because Krishna wants us to go back as quickly as possible, and sometimes when you'd have to take the medicine, we might not even say, why are you doing this, Krishna? Why is this happening to me? But the medicine is specific to cure a specific disease, whether it's a subtle, internal, we have emotions, we have different ways in which we act and how we relate with Krishna. So, and we're subtly affected by lust, anger, greed, illusion, madness, envy, any of those things. So Krishna's drawing it out. So sometimes we do our false ego. Sometimes that can be really. So actually, that's interesting. I don't know if you ever found that, Dina, but when you do actually come together with a group of a lot of devotees together, there is a certain, because none of us, we're not pure, and we're all aspiring for Krishna consciousness. But you can feel kind of little touches of envy, or you've been slighted by somebody, or somebody's not recognised you, or you don't see how great I am, or something like this, And it's all there. We're all being, Krishna's working through the social fabric. Now, generally, devotees are very kind, and they're all trying to help each other and so on. But at the same time, the general human social interaction, because we have these egos which are often bumping into each other all the time, and it's often said that that devotees are like rocks who's trying to smooth each other out a little bit, So, okay, thank you very much, and again, that's the beauty of Krishna consciousness. Like you can see that when the discussion starts, it gets really nice. Turn. Yeah. So I'll stop earlier the next time. Get through there. So, Tina Prabhu, next week.
Me, yeah.
Yeah. Whoa, 41 to 50.
Okay.
So it's
41 to 50.
Yeah. We'll see. Okay, for next week, how does Krishna, what is his next tactic with Arjuna? What does he say next? Tune in, same channel, same time next week. Srimad Bhagavad Gita Ki Jai.